Hi, and welcome back to Mrs. Pam Reads. I say back because if you're seeing this one, you've probably been through some of our current book, which is Zoo by James Patterson and Michael Ledwidge. We are currently in book 4, and we will begin on chapter 77. In our last video, something strange militarily is getting ready to go down in the Florida Keys as we have released some B-2s, which I think are bombers, from MacDill Air Force Base in Florida. Okay, so Chapter 77, NORAD Operations Center, Cheyenne Mountain Air Force Station, Colorado Springs, Colorado. When the all-hands-on-deck horn sounds throughout the compound that morning at 9 a.m., it can be heard clearly all the way down the mountain in the leafy suburbs of Colorado Springs. The newer residents of the town who notice the braying alarm may idly wonder if the siren is for the volunteer fire department before going back to their newspapers and breakfasts. Those who have family members working at the station immediately leave their jobs and yoga classes and head to the schools to gather their children. After exactly 5 minutes, the alarm ceases. Then the two 25-ton steel blast doors that protect the supposedly nuclear weapons-proof military bunker begin to close for the first time since 9/11. The corridors and rooms of the facility branch off a wide main tunnel, about as big as a train tunnel, that was bored almost through the center of the granite mountain. Goodness. The 2-story glass-encased main operations center is at the end of the network of rooms nearest the mountain's westernmost slope. In it, Air Force techs sit at cubicles, calling orders into headsets as they listen to the squawk and crackle of military radio traffic. As one enters the room, the forward and right-hand walls are taken up with screens as big as the ones at the local multiplex. The forward screen shows computer maps and blinking radar scopes. The one on the right displays a flickering patchwork of multiple real-time feeds, a montage of ground-level images taken by the cameras mounted on unmanned aircraft and warplanes currently aloft. Leaning against the stair rail outside the door of his fishbowl office, lofted above the operations center floor, NORAD Commander Michael McMarshall stands listening to the staff trading codes and coordinates back and forth. He whispers a furtive Hail Mary for his men and dry swallows the last 3 Advil out of the plastic bottle in his hand. McMarshall had been the CO during the first chaotic hours of 9/11, and this ball of wax is looking like it's going to be a mite bit worse. He returns to his office and stands behind his desk, an architect's drafting table ratcheting up a midriff level. At work, he always stands due to a training flight crash that injured his back 30 years ago. He flips through a stack of photographs. The images are from the military's most advanced lacrosse satellites, and unmanned aerial vehicles. Ground penetrating radar and thermal infrared sensor systems have picked up some very disturbing data. Shockingly, large pockets of animal swarms, as they are now being called, have aggravated in virtually every corner of the country. The initial wave of bombings has been ordered on the largest nests near the densely populated areas. Miami, Chicago, and St. Louis are first on deck. If there's any good news at all, it's that the animal aggregations seem to be situated mostly in parklands. The Everglades near Miami, Lincoln Park in Chicago, Forest Park in St. Louis. They have been working with ground forces for the last 2 days, pulling evacs out of their target zones to limit collateral damage. So then, complete sentence. So then, McMarshall pauses a moment to reflect. The United States has just begun a bombing campaign on itself. This is some catch-22 type shit. It's not just the United States. He knows Russia, several European countries, and China are now working in sync, conducting their own campaigns against animal swarms devastating their countries. They have to do something. Though people are being kept in the dark, the attacks have become rampant. In affected areas, which is pretty much everywhere now, the hospitals are full. People are holing up in their homes as though there were a plague afoot. Shipping, the airlines, the stock markets have all closed. The entire industrialized world is grinding to a halt. And it isn't going to be starting up anytime soon if anyone on earth is in fear of being torn apart by dogs 24/7. McMarshall hears a polite knock on the glass. The B-2 out of MacDill is about to deliver its payload, sir, the spry young officer says with a gung-ho grin that actually is quite irritating under the circumstances. McMarshall's shoes clang on the metal balcony overseeing the operations room. The entire forward screen is filled with the image by the time the general arrives at the stair rail. Though it's a black and white thermal image, the clarity is startling. Why? Look, there's Florida. McMarshall can make out palm fronds, a dock, an old car. We are changing our heading for our final approach, the B-2 weapons officer says over the staticky military channel. And we are away, the weapons officer announces. And the screen goes white. The boom of the daisy cutter through the pilot's open mic a moment later is a jagged roar that starts and then just keeps going on. The screen stays white as the Florida swampland burns. Get some, McMarshall's aide shouts. He whistles through his pinkies and starts to clap. Some of the other personnel join in tentatively. McMarshall pivots on his heels and heads back to his desk. There's an emergency bottle of Advil in the bottom drawer. Chapter 78. While Leahy was arranging transportation for me back to New York, I spent the rest of the morning in a cramped, crowded, and distinctly unpresidential staff room in the back of the White House's East Wing. The whole place was in a full tilt frenzy with the military actions underway. All around me, and even biovac out in the hallway, clustered by the electrical outlets, Air Force officers and politicos were working their smartphones and laptops. Above their frantic murmur was a constant low thrumming. the rotor chop of helicopters landing and taking off in the Jacqueline Kennedy Garden. It was like my head was stuck in a beehive. A professionally nondescript Secret Service agent on break began snoring softly on a couch beside me as I watched CNN, Natter, and Flash on a TV bolted to an upper corner of the room. Okay, sorry. Lost my train of thought there. I'm like, what is happening? I try to think a little bit, read a little bit ahead so I can glance up at you. So my book, my face isn't in the book the whole time. Okay. So there's a TV on in the upper corner of the room. There were a lot of stories about the animal attacks, but nothing about the military response that had just been ordered. I wonder if that was because it hadn't happened yet, or because there was some kind of government news blackout. That might be possible now, I thought, glancing at the throng of soldiers and government officials around me. I tried to call Chloe several times to tell her what was going on, but the phone would only ring twice and go to voicemail, a sign I decidedly did not like. Text messages didn't seem to be working either. My guess was that it was probably circuit overload due to high call volume. That was my hope anyway. Leahy came back for me in the early afternoon and ushered me through the crowd out into the hallway. Unfortunately, no Gulfstream jet this time, Oz. But I did manage to get you on a military C-130 cargo plane heading out of Reagan National to New York in about 2 hours. How's the military response going? Any word? Your guess is as good as mine, Leahy said. He led me down some stairs into a utility corridor. They're still keeping me in the dark. We passed stacks of K-rations and a chef in crisp whites cussing a blue streak into his cell phone on the way to the door. At the bottom of some steps was a small parking lot crowded with town cars and military vehicles. At the edge of the lot, standing beside the black Suburban that had brought me in, Sergeant Alvarez waved at me cheerily, as if the world weren't ending. I'll keep plugging away on this end, Leahy said, shaking my hand and giving it a warm, paternal squeeze that was meant to be reassuring and wasn't. In the meantime, when you get back to New York, prepare a presentation to explain the science of this to the president and her staff when they're ready to listen. That would be extremely helpful. I'm going to arrange a teleconference for this evening or tomorrow morning at the latest. A teleconference? Splendid idea. Now, why didn't I think of it? Oh, wait, I had. I wondered how many thousands of tax dollars had been wasted on my useless trips down here. Then I made the decision not to care. Getting home to my family was my priority now. Will do, Mr. Leahy, I said, making my escape. Chapter 79. Sergeant Alvarez was sitting in the driver's seat, locking and loading an M16 as I opened the passenger side door and climbed into the SUV. The VIP treatment was over. He was wearing Kevlar body armor now and a grenade vest. He didn't have to explain to me that things were worse now on the streets of DC. I thought about Chloe and Eli back in New York and wished I was already airborne. We were 2 blocks south of the White House, about to make the left onto Constitution Avenue, when we heard music. Annie DeFranco yodeled from the cranked speakers of a car parked at the corner of President's Park. Around it stood 30 or 40 young people, many in hoodies, bearing their college insignias and drinking beer. Some of them had painted their faces to look like animals. I smelled pot. They had handmade signs that read, "Meat is murder. Ain't payback a bitch. Hi ho, it's back to nature we go." Everything has gone nuts, I thought, shaking my head. Animals, the president, college kids. When we rolled past the National Mall again, I thought of all the noble historical assemblies the area had been host to. I thought of Martin Luther King Jr. delivering the "I Have a Dream" speech there. The presidential inaugurations, now there were dead dogs floating in the reflecting pool. We took the Arlington Bridge back over the Potomac for the airport this time. About a half a mile inbound, we came toward an overpass. Standing on it were what looked like more deluded young protesters. The college kids we'd seen back by the White House had been mostly harmless, but these guys looked more sinister in their ski masks and black bandanas. They were waving black flags. Then there was a flash of darting movement in front of the SUV, and the windshield caved in. Glass dust stung my eyes as the joint compound bucket somebody had dropped from the overpass whipped just past my head into the back seat. The SUV accelerated and veered to the left. I turned and saw that Alvarez's face was covered with blood. He was slumped over the steering wheel, motionless. I reached for the wheel, tried to right the vehicle. The car slid into the Jersey barrier at around 80. Metal shrieked and showered sparks as we lurched up and rode the barrier for 50 feet before the momentum flipped the truck. And we're going to stop there. Interesting, not fun. Whew. Crazy things happen when crazy things happen. All right, you guys, thank you for joining me. I'm sorry I trip over my tongue sometimes, but I mean, life happens, right? As I've said before, I am not a professional announcer, a professional this. I just do this because I like to read. I think there's people out there that like to hear the stories, and I'm just me doing me, and y'all are out there doing you. Isn't it great? We can just all be unique and have a good time. All right, you guys, enough philosophizing. That's a word. I'm gonna stop now. Y'all have a great day. And I hope to see you again soon. Bye.